Earlier in this series, we took a brief look at the process for determining what chords belong in a given key. We showed you how to take the notes of a major scale and pile them up on top of each other to form a set of chords that I referred to as the Diatonic Series. For example, here's the Diatonic Series of chords in C major. As we move more into the realm of jazz, the Diatonic Series tends to get extended to form 4-note chords. You can see that this is done simply by piling another note on top of each chord, 2 steps above the previous one. You can also see that the resultant set of chords are all types of 7th chord. Understanding the differences between each of the 4 7th chord types is the key to learning and remembering which chord shapes to use to play these chords. So in this short lesson, I want to take you on a brief tour of these 4 chord types. On the 1st and 4th steps of the major scale are built major 7th chords. These are made up of the 1st, 3rd, 5th and 7th notes of the major scale relative to the root notes, which are C and F in this case. In open position, all we would do to play the C major 7th is take the C major chord, which already has the notes 1, 3, 5 in the key of C, C, E, G. And then to add the 7th note, we convert this C note at the top here, take it down a step by lifting the finger off it, to give us the B note, the 7th note in the key of C. And then if we take F major, we could do a similar thing with that. We've already got our 1, 3, 5 notes there, F, A and C in the key of F. Normally we'd have that F held down on the top, but we can convert that back to an E, which is the 7th note in the key of F. So that's our F major 7th. Here are a few commonly used movable shapes for major 7th chords, rooted off the 6th, 5th and 4th strings. For example, here's C major 7th rooted off the 6th string, the 5th string and the 4th string. And here's F major 7th rooted off the 6th string, 5th string and the 4th string. On the 2nd, 3rd and 6th steps of the major scale are built minor 7th chords. These are made up of the 1st, flatted 3rd, 5th and flatted 7th notes of the major scale relative to the root notes of each chord, which are D, E and A in this key. In open position, we could start with our D major chord, take the F sharp, the 3rd, down to F to flatten the 3rd. That gives us a D minor. And then we could turn that into D minor 7th by taking the 8th note D down 2 steps to the flatted 7th C there. So that's how the D minor 7th is formed. And that also gives us a movable shape that we can use rooted on the D string for all minor 7ths. Similarly for the E shape, we could start with E major, turn it into minor by taking the G sharp down to G, lifting that finger off there. And then we've got a few choices. We can either add a flatted 7th note by taking this E down to D, lifting the finger off there. So that's the 1 finger E minor 7th shape. But we could also add the D here on the 2nd string at the 3rd fret, either as well as the D on the 4th string or instead of. So those are 3 options for the E minor 7th shape. Any of these three options may be used for the movable minor seventh shape rooted off the sixth string, but I actually favour using yet another possible option. So this is a 4-string chord because I'm muting out the 5th string and the top string. I've got my root here on the 6th string under my 2nd finger, my flat 7th on the 4th string at the same fret, my flat 3rd on the 3rd string at that same fret, and if needed a 5th on the 2nd string there as well. So that's my movable minor 7th shape by preference, rooted off the 6th string. If we look at the open A minor 7th shape, again we could start with A major. We turn that into minor by taking the 3rd back to the flat 3rd there, C sharp back to C. And then to make it into a minor 7th, we can take our A note, our 8th note in the scale, down to the flat 7th note, simply by lifting the finger off. So we end up with that shape. And this again is a useful movable shape rooted off the 5th string. So here's a summary of my favourite minor 7th movable chord shapes rooted off each of the 3 bass strings. Uniquely on the 5th step of the major scale is built the dominant 7th chord, made up of the 1st, 3rd, 5th and flatted 7th notes of the major scale relative to the root, which is G in this key. In normal open position, we generally take the top note of the G chord, the G here, down 2 steps to give us the F, the flatted 7th in the key of G, and that makes our G 7th chord. But some lesser known alternatives are to add an extra 5th in there, turning that B note into a D, and gives us a nice chance to ornament the chord like that. And then sometimes I'll add in an extra flat 7th note with my little finger there on the 3rd string, on the F note there, on the D string. Movable options for the dominant 7th chord include this one, rooted off the 6th string, which is really a 5-string version of the normal 6-string bar chord. Off the 5th string we can use the A 7th shape, make that a movable pattern. Personally I find that slightly awkward, and so I prefer to use the C 7th shape, still rooted off the 5th string but this end of the chord. But notice that this doesn't have all 4 notes of the chord. We've got a 1st, a 3rd, a flat 7th, and no 5th. We've got another octave note there. If we do need a 5th, if we need it in the bass, we can always use this little trick, moving the finger across to there, or we can add it in the top end of the chord if we think more about how the C 7th shape is used to play B 7th, like that. That gives us the 5th note there, giving us a movable chord on the top 4 strings. And for the D 7th shape, movable note off the D chord, rooted off the D string, we can simply use the D 7th shape. Here's a summary of the movable dominant 7th chord shapes. Finally, we come to the chord built on the 7th step of the major scale. As you can see, this chord goes by 2 different commonly used names: the half diminished chord or the minor 7 flat 5. I quite like calling it the minor 7 flat 5 chord because that helps me remember how to build the chord. For example, if I took the A minor 7th shape, turned that into a movable shape and play, say, a B minor 7th with it, all I've got to do then is to identify that as the 5th note, take that down a fret to flatten the 5, and I've got my movable minor 7th flat 5 chord rooted off the 5th string, and I can play that either as a bar chord or as a little 4-finger chord, a bit easier. Similarly, off the 6th string, I can take my minor 7th shape and identify that as my 5th note, take that down a step to flat the 5, and that gives me my movable half diminished chord off the 6th string. Finally, off the D string root, I can use my D minor 7th shape, and again identify that note as the 5th there, take that down a step, and I've got my movable half diminished 7th chord like that. So here's a summary of each of those. Once you've learned to play a few of the options for these chords, it's worth practicing them in order to play a sort of scale of chords, maybe something like this. For example, off the 6th string we could play all the chords in F major, off the 5th string all the chords in B flat major, and off the 4th string maybe all the chords in E flat major. Various different options though, and it's for you to find your own preferences. Getting on top of using these chord shapes is one of the entrance ways into playing jazz guitar. On the Secret Guitar Teacher site you find a lot more information about these chords and several exercises to help you get fluent at using them. See you again soon.